styles. If you just say, well, here I am, as a human being, how can I express myself totally and completely? Now, that way, you won't create
Alright,
style.
we're back
The
here
style is a crystal
at Al's Drum School for the Al's Drum School podcast with me, your host Al, and
Jordan. Hello.
we're here again. So we successfully recorded our pilot episode, and now this is our official episode 1.
We were successful. It was the mics that let us down.
Yeah, with my setup error. So it was a mix of human error. Let's blame the technology. That's always a good thing to do. So this time we're back full force, ready to go with a different setup. So hopefully this is sounding better for you. We're going to attack it the same way. We're going to sit, we're going to chat, we're going to talk about some drum stuff. We're going to talk about some news a little bit as well. Jordan's going to Google some drumming words, this is genuine, guys. I really don't. He actually just said to me, oh, should we have a look? And I was like, no, don't tell me anything. And he asked me, what if I don't know what it is? And I said, well, I'm going to look like a bit of a twat because I'm supposed to be a drum teacher. So that might happen.
Well, it might be interesting because this week's one comes from memory. So I haven't actually Googled it. This is something from school. I might not even say the word right, so we'll see.
It might not even be related to drumming.
Can Al figure out what Jordan's talking about?
What 15-year-old Jordan is trying to figure out.
Answers on a postcard if you know what he's going on about.
Send them to Styling Corporation. Okay. That's not going to be a recurring thing, by the way. Might be. Maybe it is. Okay, so... How's your week been? What's been happening since pilot episode? What's going on?
It's been busy. It's been very busy. I think the drum school, because of everything we're working on, it's consuming so much time. Mm-hmm. But that's good. But because of all the stuff we're working on with the online lessons and the beginners course launching, little plug for that. It's just been super busy. Yeah. What about you?
I was away. We'll get into that a little bit more in dad life, but I went away to Belfast for the weekend.
The island trip.
Yeah, the island trip. Not much drinking.
For
at
you?
A wedding in Ireland. For me. Yeah, for me. I mean, I did have some Guinness.
But, I thought you had to have. I thought you had to drink a certain amount to be allowed access.
So when you get to the
Ireland.
airport, you have to sink a pint on arrival.
Yeah.
When they check your passport and stuff, there's Guinness waiting, so you sink that.
If you're not shaking, handing over the passport, you're not allowed into
on
Ireland.
the way back. If you don't have a red nose, they're like, where have you actually been? What have you been doing? So life is good. Been away. It's getting autumnal here. We're in England, if anyone's listening to this elsewhere, and it's getting pretty autumnal.
It's wet.
It's wet.
Raining.
It's very wet. It's gone from very hot to very wet very quickly. Life is good. Life is all good.
And I want to give an honorary shout out to the fact that this is another Tea Time with Jordan and Al episode.
Yes.
And we're drinking the worst coffee that it's possible to purchase.
Luckily, my stamp card was full, so one of them was free, because we did say actually last time we bought this coffee from said Brighton coffee shop that we weren't going to go back there again. But we're basically right where we are poised here in our studio, where we're located. We're in between two pretty shit coffee shops. So
they're just garbage. They're awful. It's burnt. It's just shit.
If anyone,
welcome to the whinging podcast.
There's probably not many people listening, but if you are listening and you want to send us some nice coffee, do that, please, because
If you're in Brighton and there's a good coffee shop, let us know where it is, because I don't know where it is.
Yeah, we're struggling a little bit over here in Portslade.
And if you own a coffee shop, stop burning the beans. Just stop burning it.
Do you know what? I used to work for Monmouth Coffee in London, like back in the day when I was figuring out
You've lived a lot of life.
What the fuck I was doing with the drums, and I didn't learn much because I was doing maintenance, but I knew what burnt coffee tastes like. And every time we've got a coffee from this place, the first signal that's bad is it burns your mouth. I know that coffee shouldn't be that hot, right? Secondly, it's sour. Why is my coffee sour? I don't want sour coffee.
Or bitter.
It's like dirty pipes in a pub. It's got that taste, isn't it?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You just know. And for me, who only mainly drinks black coffee anyway. It's insufferable. There's not even any milk. I don't have sugar. There's nothing to take away the pain.
The one joy you've got.
It's just dreadful.
Jordan's on a bit of a food plan and stuff at the moment as well, with one of his clients has helped set him up. So you only get small joys. There's only There's only certain things he puts in his mouth that he actually enjoys, and coffee's one of them.
What a wonderful way of wording that.
And they keep fucking it up. So yeah. Anyway, right. That was like a really long, convoluted intro about
that
coffee.
was the intro, mainly whinging. On to the good stuff.
So we're gonna do a quick dad life check-in. I mentioned really briefly there that we just went to Ireland. So it was the first time that Bonnie was on a plane. So that was interesting.
How did she behave?
She was great. Me and Annie's my wife, by the way, for those who don't know. Me and Annie.
Annie was screaming her head
not
off.
So fucking great. I'll give you like a 1,000-foot view of the weekend. So Bonnie decided to sleep in for the first time. So we were supposed to leave, and she slept till and this might not sound that exciting, but yeah, she slept till 8 o'clock in the morning, which is quite a thing for a 4-month-old baby. But anyway, it made us quite late. And I've spent the last 16 weeks blaming Bonnie every time I'm late when it's not her fault.
Was that your excuse this morning?
Poor little thing. Probably. But this time it genuinely was her, not her fault, obviously. But yeah. But we were traveling in a group, so they couldn't check in without us. So it was a little bit stressful with prams and car seats, and then the gate was closing in like 10 minutes.
Were they parents?
They're also parents,
so they understand a little bit.
But
if it was me,
still,
I'd be savage.
Yeah. So it started off like that, but then Bonnie was great on the flight. We had a great weekend. Me and the other dad who was there, we were sort of like in bed at 9:30, 10 every night while the girls went out. And I mean, I say they partied, they're still breastfeeding, so it's still like very, very gentle partying, but they had their fun, and we sort of got to hang out with the kids, which is the first time I've really had like proper solo time with her. So that was quite good. A little bit scary, but good too.
I was going to say, you're underselling it. You sent me a voice note over the weekend about how much you loved being able to use the baby as an excuse to go home early. So there's the rock star that is Al Moody.
That's it.
Loving the fact that he can use his infant child, as an excuse to get out of the club.
Night. Anyone who's toured with me, any musicians out there who've toured with me, they know that I'm always the guy like back to the hotel, run a bath, have a herbal tea, and I'm in bed.
That to me is a party night. You get the candles, a little bit of Epsom bath salts.
Partying's overrated, man. It is.
It is overrated.
It is a bit overrated.
Especially if you're not single, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, yeah. Do you know what? You're right, man. Like that was when we were like in my 20s. That was why we went out, right? Like you can drink booze at home. You don't.
Yeah.
It wasn't to go and drink beers in the pub.
No,
let's be honest.
Give me a good book and a 9:30 bedtime any night.
One whiskey. Jordan's a whiskey drinker. You probably have one whiskey.
Yeah, whiskey. Yeah.
So back to the island trip. So we had a beautiful time. Bonnie was great. She looked awesome in her little dress, and it was an awesome weekend. And
so first flight,
yeah.
So presumably first time abroad as well. Not that it's massively abroad, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And first wedding.
And
she was well behaved for all three.
Well, technically, she was at our wedding in Mum's tummy, but we just didn't know.
No.
So again,
she probably didn't know much about it.
She was unaware as well. Yeah, but she had a good time because. A quick little more insight into my dad life. We found out we were having a baby, me and my wife, 3 days after our wedding. So a little
nice
whoops, baby. We planned on having kids, and it's beautiful, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But it was definitely a shock. I wouldn't even say surprise. I would say shock. There was a few days of me just sort of leaning over my bed, going, "Fuck, like what have we done?" But she's great, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So yeah. To summarise, first trip away, first plane, first wedding. She smashed all of it.
Has your opinion on screaming kids on planes changed now that you're a father?
Yes, because on the way back...
I don't think mine ever will.
On the way back, we were on a tea time flight, which was a little bit interesting because Bonnie's bedtime is usually between... It depends what day she's having, but like between 6 and 8, something like that-ish. And we were on the flight at 6:30. So by the time we were landing, she was like done for the day. And then the ears, like we're feeding when we're landing. Well, my wife is feeding when we're landing trying to help with the sort of equalization. But basically, she was fucking kicking off big time. So it was like wrap her in my arms, rock backwards and forwards, just really, really settle her. And I got her to sleep, because also Annie doesn't like flying. My wife doesn't like flying, right? So I've got...
As in, like, fear level?
Fucking hates it. Hates it. So she's crying, holding onto the seat in front. Bonnie's screaming in my arms, right?
Wow, I didn't know that.
I do breath work every day for people who don't know that. And it's for fucking moments like that.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, boom. So, but to be honest... everything is with a baby, everything's different. So my focus is, of course, making sure my wife's okay, but my wife's going to be okay because it's just a fear of flying. As soon as we get on the ground, she's fine. But for Bonnie, doesn't know that. She's just in I'm freaking out mode. So I'm just laser focused on her, and that's quite easy to do.
So you were the rock for the whole weekend.
I was the rock for the weekend, mate.
You had a baby in one arm, Annie in the other,
crying
rocking back and forth,
crying baby in the other. Bring my wife more wine. Bring my baby.
I've got to be honest, it doesn't sound like a great trip, but I know you had a good time.
I'll take your word for it. No, it's new levels in dad life. Everything's different, and yeah, it was good though.
So, is there a reason Annie's scared of flying? Has she ever had a bad experience, or is it just that sort of irrational?
She might be a bit angry.
Or rational. It's interesting. People call it an irrational fear. I think it's a very rational fear.
Don't
we shouldn't
say that.
be flying.
Don't say that.
No, flying is super safe. Flying's super safe.
I see what you mean.
But we
Okay,
shouldn't be flying. It's not natural, is it?
Yeah, same as we shouldn't be breathing underwater.
Yeah, or whizzing down the motorway at 80 miles, 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Sorry, Freudian slip.
Definitely
70 miles an hour. Yeah, always. Yeah.
Me and my wife, we didn't quite have an argument about it, but for me, we have to surrender to that when we step on a plane that is filled with highly flammable jet fuel that's traveling at 400 miles an hour, 30,000 feet above the earth.
Yeah.
's in it.
Yeah.
See, I'm not saying that makes those fears go away, but it's a conscious choice to do that. So,
but all joking aside, I've flown all over the world, long haul flights, short haul flights, travelled a lot, and the worst flight experience I ever had was on the way to Singapore for the Grand Prix. We flew from the UK to Dubai, 2-hour stopover, and then Dubai to Singapore, and the turbulence was horrific to the point that the plane dropped. And cups and trays and stuff that were on people's laps floated for a minute. It was horrendous. And I remember being really lucky in two ways. The first way was I just ordered 2 whiskies. I had just enough time to order 2 whiskies. So I necked both of those. And then I remember finding a lot of comfort in the fact that if this is it, there's nothing I can do.
Yep.
And I remember watching some of the people, and every time the turbulence hit, they would grab the armchairs and stuff. And I, in my slightly drunken state, I started laughing because I just couldn't believe their stupidity. The seats are going down as well. We're all going down. No one's getting out of it.
Roller coaster it, right?
And I remember just thinking, this is hilarious. And of course it was fine. And then the second time was when I spent a couple of weeks in New York, as you know, not long ago. And I flew my mum and my nan out for a birthday present, a surprise present. They had no idea where they were going. And my mum, again, is not a great... she doesn't enjoy flying massively. I would say she's scared. She probably wouldn't, but I would say she's scared. And there was going to be turbulence, I knew, because of the weather. And I told her on the way over that... And I found this out. I found this out. There has never been a recorded plane crash in human history that has been put down to turbulence ever.
Right. Okay.
So
do you hear that, Annie?
Yeah. So the chances of you being the first is extremely unlikely.
Yes.
Turbulence does not crash planes.
Yeah.
And my mum said there was turbulence and it was horrible. The airline themselves were fantastic how they dealt with it apparently. But she said she had that playing in her head and it did help her. And I do find it interesting. It's completely out of your control, and if you surrender yourself to that, I find it easier.
It's a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a lot easier, totally.
Yeah.
And actually, I was flying back from a gig once, and it was through one of those, like, the storm had a name, so it was like a proper fucking storm, right?
Yeah.
We were flying back from Ireland, funnily enough, and it was one of those where lights were flashing on the plane, kind of thing. It dropped a few times, and you felt the pilot like gas to get through, out of it. Then I was scared.
Oh, it's
fucking
horrible.
hell. Like,
it's
I was
horrible.
sweaty palms, But again, it's the thing that helps me a little bit in those moments is actually looking out the window. I find it like something quite like mentally, not physically, but like grounding about seeing the earth from that distance. It's when it's cloudy and you can't see anything and you're just in this fucking tube.
I was just
and
about to say.
That's what spins me out a little bit. Now I dive, or have done in the past. I love, like, I'm a huge fan of being in the sea, on it, in it, whatever it is. Send me 30, 40 meters down, I'm comfy as fuck. I could spend all day. I could live in one of those submarines quite happily, quite comfortably. But yeah, being up in that tube in the sky when I've got no reference point. That's what it is, right? Like, at least if for my mind, I'm like, if I'm going out of this plane, like you say, let's go, send it, let's go. No parachute, I'm jumping out the fucking window. I'm going to enjoy it on the way down. I'm going to do 20 backflips. I'm maybe being a little bit silly. Obviously, anyone who's been in a plane crash might have some sharp
anyone who's
realities
been in a plane
from
crash
it.
isn't listening. They didn't survive. There's
Well,
no survival.
That's true.
There's
That's
very
true.
little survival chance.
What my wife does is so her brother studied aeronautical engineering at uni, so she'll phone him a couple of
that's
days
cool.
before and be like, just tell me again, like, why it's almost physically. The way he's explained it, and forgive me if I've butchered this, but it's almost physically impossible for a plane to just fall
That's
out of the
massive
sky.
unlikely.
It can't happen.
So
Physics, the way they're built, it would gradually descend and it would be fine.
Yeah.
You know, the only one thing I do know that you're fucked is if you're landing on water. Planes cannot land on water. It's a myth.
Yeah.
Like I've watched
there's so many
I've watched
things.
some stuff on YouTube about it, so it must be real.
But there's so many things in health and safety and in precautions that are there purely for the person who doesn't know to sorry, I was miles away then.
That's okay.
For people who don't know to feel better. You know, the
Yes.
inflatable slide. Oh, that's going to save our lives.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
God that's there.
Thank God for that.
Never
Never mind
whistle.
the 3 degree
The
water
whistle.
and the sharks and
Yeah.
all that shit that's living and the 30-foot waves.
Yeah.
But that little rubber dinghy,
Yeah.
you're going to be sweet.
And the whistle. I've always wanted, you know, whenever I'm in dire straits in life, I wish I had a whistle.
When that 600-meter tanker's coming past, the huge engine, you're going, excuse me,
yeah,
over here.
because you're not like frozen to death.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
in trauma, in shock.
Or just drowned because you've been
yeah.
treading
or
water
just dead
for
on
3
impact.
days.
This
Like,
is depressing. Who's listening to this podcast? This is dreadful.
this is supposed to be about drumming and we're talking about plane crashes. Right, let's wrap that up then.
Yeah.
So back to the point, I went to Ireland on the weekend. Next.
And you got back,
And I'm
the
safe.
plane didn't crash.
We're all safe.
Yeah. But in fairness, you did have the whistle, so you would have been fine. Anyway.
Well, there is that, yeah. Maybe I should travel with a snare drum, so if I do crash, I just bash the fuck out of the snare drum. That would be more useful.
Let's move on and don't let Annie listen to this episode.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's been happening here at the drum school.
Well, I was just going to say, actually, there's so much happening. I think we really should cover that. We touched on it a little bit last time, but a bit deeper this time.
Yeah.
You've launched a beginner's course, which is fantastic.
Yes.
As well, I've had a look through it. It's now on the website, available to purchase. You've seen it on social media. That is literally something you've built, designed to take someone from never having played the drums to being beginner level, not complete novice.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. And I think
Thanks.
I have an invested interest. Obviously, I do. But I think the value is great
You've
as well.
bought the course then, right?
Obviously,
You bought
yeah.
3.
I've 10. I thought you told me if I don't buy 10,
I'm pinching him under
I can't
the
go
table
on the
here
podcast
going,
anymore.
"Fucking say the right thing.
But the value in that is huge.
Definitely, and so my aim with that course was to something. In my experience, we have so many different students that come through here. I've taught for the best part of 17 years now as a teacher and a touring musician, but I've taught since I was about 15 and I'm 33 now, so 18 years. So and there's so many different types of students and different types of people and all these things, and not the biggest thing I've realized in that time is that not everybody wants to take their instrument learning or playing an instrument to the nth degree and be a career player, right? And that's cool. Some people do, and we have offerings for that as well, but most people who come here don't want to do that. They want to learn to play along to their favorite rock song, maybe join a band and play a few pub gigs, and then they build on top of that. So I'm not saying that's where everyone stops, but you know, that's their sort of inclination to get them started, right? So that was my aim with that course, was to be able to firstly to get them playing a beat. That's my aim in anyone's first drum lessons. Play a beat. Let's do that, because trying to throw all that information, trying to throw 20 years of drumming at someone is just not going to happen. Let's just dilute it down. So my aim of the course was to give people the information and the skills and the confidence to be able to sit behind a drum kit and go, watch this. Sort of campfire guitar playing, that's kind of what people want to do. In the first instance, there's a lot more to it after that. So that was my aim with the course. I feel like I achieved that. I feel that there's probably going to be improvements made over the years as we develop this and make more video offerings. I believe done is better than perfect. Still keep quality control, but get it done. Perfectionism stifles me and stops me from working. So
I agree with that.
And also, I recorded the first lesson. Gosh, I'd say, well, we're another year in nearly now. So yeah, like 2 years ago in the old studio.
Yeah.
And it's sat on the hard drive, edited, finished, but I didn't touch it because for several reasons, and we can maybe talk a little bit more about this, was my imposter syndrome has been a huge thing that you've been helping me with and we've been working through. Also my time management and actually like batch filming. You know, in my mind, I was like, I got to film, edit, graphics, all that stuff per lesson, which is not the way to do it. I now know. Film it all, edit it all, do all the, you know, like in chunks, like big batches. So those were my sort of hurdles for me, some of them mental, some of them physical, like actually finding the time to do it, or rather scheduling the time to do it. There's plenty of fucking time. It's doing it. It's actually doing it. So for me, it's more than just, so the offering for the students is huge because that's why I do what I do, but actually as well, it was a really good exercise in proving to myself that I can achieve these things and I can do it if I just fucking get on with it and stopping myself with like overzealous thinking and perfectionism and all those things that kind of stop my workflow. That's me. I'm not saying everybody else should be the same. That's how I work, and for me it seems to work. And since we've come into this new sort of zone with the drum school and having all these video lessons offering, the momentum's huge. Like we're just flying through it all. So
and also how much it helps the student. So I've you know, from a teaching point of view, if anyone's listening who teaches in any aspect, when you go from complete novice and you do the course and you start to learn some of these skills, in my opinion, that makes it so much easier for them to then come in here. Yes. They know what they're sat in front of. They know enough to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And that seed has been planted to want to learn more. And you know, I've seen from looking at it from a business point of view, getting the complete novice in the studio and then getting them to commit as a customer long term to learn the drums is hard because they're learning so much that it can become another job. It can become, oh, you know, I just can't get on with this, and you know, I've got bills to pay, I've got this, and I'm stressed, I want to get to the gym, and it becomes a job. But once that seed's planted and you start to enjoy learning, that's when they're hooked, and that's when they come back. And that's the same with any product. You know, that's why you even look at companies like Apple. There's the cheaper iPhones. You could argue none of them are cheap, but there are cheaper iPhones that get you into the Apple ecosystem, and then you're stuck. Then you've got to get everything else Apple because you've started to understand or enjoy the Apple experience, or Android or anyone else. But you know what I mean. Apple's a good example of that. And I think that is where what you've done with the beginners course is so good, and how it will really help. From a business point of view, it will help because it will lead to more clients, but it will lead to more happy clients from their point of view as well, because of how easy it is for them to go from zero to hero, as you put it.
Yeah, that just kind of came out when I was doing it, and I was like, fuck it. Again, back to my perfectionism, like, just, it's done. You know,
but it's interesting. Perfectionism is a killer. It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
And there's outliers who are absolute perfectionists and have achieved mega success, and that's great, but I still think they're the exception that proves the rule. For most people, focusing on perfection is going to kill them getting anything done.
I agree.
You know, and very, very rarely in life is anything you do going to be perfect anyway, especially if you're open to the views of other people. You know, there's things I've done that I think are perfect for me. You look at them and go, well, I'd have done that slightly different.
Totally.
So you're never going to please everyone.
For
so
sure.
just get the work done.
Yeah, definitely. And so yeah, it's been an exercise for me in all those things. And then business wise, we're running a service business essentially right now. You know, like we're swapping time for money. You pay X amount and you get this much time. For people who want to get into this, like the margins are fucking terrible. They're horrendous. Like, actually, when you look at them, they're like, whoa. So business-wise, in order to be able to have the business giving back to us, like financially what we need to live on, we have to have resale products that are made one time and resellable, because it just doesn't work. Even if, like, we've done the numbers, man, like even if I'm in here 40 hours a week, it's not enough to. And when I say
it's not enough for what we want to achieve.
Correct. That's what I was just going to say. So when I say enough, like, I'm not afraid to admit that there's a certain quality of life that I want for me and my family now, and that for some people that's 100 grand a year, for some that's 40. Wherever you're happy is fine, but knowing that, and we realized very quickly that that being in that sort of time for money business is very difficult to get there without huge amounts of student numbers and huge amounts of premises or rooms and teachers, but the margin's the same. It's just quantity, and with quantity comes the same headache, but it's just fucking bigger, and there's more people to manage, and there's more this and more that. So so having those resellable products from the business side is completely invaluable. You know, like I was just thinking yesterday, and to be completely frank with everyone, we haven't sold one yet. Like, let's be honest about that. We're in the early days of doing this, so we haven't sold one yet. But I sat yesterday and I thought, so here's what my thought pattern was. We sold a chunk of lessons this week, right? Someone bought loads of lessons leading up for the next 3 months. Awesome. Money comes in. Great. Then in my mind, I go, well, we now have to do that work. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but like when you're looking at it from a business head, yeah, that, like, whatever it was, 400, 500, 600 pounds worth of lessons. It's not 400, 500, 600 pounds because we have to pay someone rent, blah, 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 blah. I thought to myself, we will make more of selling one of those courses than we do for 3 months worth of fucking lessons for a student. Like, when you look at it like that, now I'm not trying to poo-poo anything that anyone else is doing or what we're doing. Like, that is a huge part of our business, and I want that to remain. I want bricks and mortar because I like the credibility. I like the culture it brings around our business. I like students being here, hanging out, chatting in the hallways. I think it's fucking great. But again, reality, business head wise, it doesn't work. It just doesn't. So
also from a time efficiency point of view, how much of that time is spent teaching the same lessons to get someone from never picked up the sticks to A, just to A, let alone A to B. So the fact that can be done in a course, and then they can come into the drum school knowing enough to go from A to B, B to C, that is invaluable, and there's no reason that doesn't have to be. That has to be in person. There's no reason. The videos are so good that you've done. You're not losing anything, and in my opinion, you're actually gaining something. You're gaining the ability to learn at the pace that suits you. You haven't just got an hour. You haven't got to be out in 45 minutes or whatever.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You can rewatch that video 100 times. It's yours.
Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic. And I think anyone who is interested in building a drum school, music school, or teaching anything really, if you can do these courses that get people to a certain point, I think it's a no-brainer.
I agree. I definitely agree. And it, part of my thinking with it as well was that it just happened this week. We get so many comments and stuff on the socials of like, oh, the drum kit's in the cupboard. I haven't pulled the drum kit out for years. So this course isn't necessarily designed for anybody. I mean, it is, like, in terms of the way it's built, but not everyone has access to a drum kit is what I'm saying. But most of our sort of if you're like, we have our demographic of like kids and adults are kind of split into those two areas. Most of the adults are people who picked it up for a 30th or a 40th or whatever it was, never went back to it because life got in the way, but they've got the fucking drums sat there gathering dust, and every day they see it and they're like, oh, like it's that same thing, like the gym bag, like everyone signs up in January to the gym, right? So I wanted it to be there for people like that. So exactly like you've just said, they don't need to go, fuck, I got the school run, I got all this stuff to do. Cool, buy the course. You can do, the videos are like they range in 10 to 20 minute lengths. There's 5 videos. You can do that when the kids have gone to bed. You can do that, like we have our morning routines, both of us, we do things like, you could do that if you're a 4:30 wake up kind of person. You could do a 20-minute lesson before, like there's ways to fit it in rather than it being like there's only a lesson slot available on this day at this time and I can't make that work, so I'm not going to bother. So now we can offer it to everybody, which feels really, really good.
And from a branding point of view as well, so you've got, if you're capping yourself at only being able to teach person to person or in person, you're only ever going to reach so many people. I'm not afraid to admit our goals for this drum school is to build, or certainly my goals is to build the #1 drum destination in the UK. That's the goal. So we are not going to get there if we rely on in-person lessons. It's just not possible. We have to have, you know, massive offices in every city in the UK. It's ridiculous. When you teach a course or you teach online, you can reach millions of people could download that all over the world and start learning the drums the Owls Drum School way. That to me is super exciting, especially coming from you know, business and marketing background.
Especially because I want to buy a Tesla. That's a bit of a running joke. So that's really like drum school news. That's kind of the biggest thing that's been happening here, really.
Yeah.
We are, so just last point on that, we're going to be before Christmas at some point, we're going to be running a webinar that's going to give you a little teaser into all the info that's in that course. There will also be running a discount for members, for people who join that webinar live with us. We'll probably open the car at a discounted price for a limited amount of time after that as well, so if you did miss it. But so keep your eyes and ears out on the socials for that. We'll be running we're calling it a webinar, it'll probably be a live on Instagram or some platform that's easy to use and everyone can access quite easily. We will put a date out for that really soon. We're actually going to schedule that today, so we'll get that out soon. And anything else happening at the drum school?
I think it's, I mean, you're stepping back for a while. You're coming away from in-person teaching.
I am. Yeah, so maybe we should talk about that a little bit as well. Actually, that's quite a big one. We'll maybe like scan over that, and maybe I'll do a little mini episode on that. That might be a good idea of my reasons and why I'm doing that. But yes, in a nutshell, I'm currently only teaching 1 day a week here. We have other teachers that are here. I'm taking a step back for the next quarter. The plan is to do it for the next quarter. So I will only be teaching on limited amounts of time in the month. We're not certain on what that is yet, but limited times on the month. And the reason, there's several reasons. The first one is Bonnie. I'm even 1 day a week. It's not that I'm choosing to be with my family. That's the way I'm going to word it, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I know it's my name on the door, it's my business, all that stuff, but I'm choosing to spend this time with my family. The second reason is there's so much growth happening at the drum school at the moment that actually I can't focus. I can't. There's too much going on, and I want to acknowledge that and not be afraid to voice that I wouldn't say my students are suffering, because they're not. I'm still able to deliver the quality that I think they deserve. I just feel that for a limited period of time, the business is going to benefit so much more from me and you knuckling down, spending the next quarter planning like fuck basically for next year. So that's what's happening. So anyone who is currently studying with me and listening to this, fear not, I am still here. I'm still on the phone, I'm still on the email, you'll see me all over the socials. I'm not going anywhere, so to speak.
I think that's important to mention as well. This isn't you taking a back seat in Owls Drum School. No, this is you taking the driving seat of Owls Drum School for the next 3 to 6 months, because we are bringing things in place that are going to continue to offer cutting edge ways to learn. And in order to get those done, you have to be in the driving seat. And I think, unfortunately, the way things are going with the growth is you risk coasting rather than controlling where we're going. And I actually think it should be applauded, the decision to do what you have to do for the next 6 months. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners, sole traders, etc., you can end up just going through the motions, and I think that just leads to stagnation. Whereas we've got so many ideas and so many products in the pipeline, so many new ways of learning, so many things we have to do, that you've made the decision to stop being an operator and become an owner for a while.
That's what I was going to say.
I think I really do think that should be applauded.
Thanks. And it definitely wasn't an easy decision. It's so alien to me,
and it's going to cost us some money. I think that's what I think. Also, it's worth being super honest with anyone listening. We have crunched the numbers, and you coming away from teaching is going to cost us some money. But the time that you're giving to this area is worth more than the money we're going to lose short term. for the long-term growth. And that is, you listen to so many people when they first start their business, they have all these ideas, and 6 years down the line, none of it's happened because they got stuck in the daily motions. So sometimes taking a short-term hit in order to focus your energy elsewhere is not only important, it's literally crucial to achieving what you want to do. So, if anyone is thinking or needing to do that, plan it. We've planned it meticulously, understand the risks and what it's going to cost you, but don't be afraid to do it, because otherwise 6 years will go by and you'll look back and go, if only. And I think that's a worse place to be than losing some finances short term.
I agree, and I hope it doesn't happen, because I don't want to lose students. I never want to see. Well, I say that each student has their own journey. Some are longer, some are shorter than others. It's all good. Like, I'm certainly not someone who feels that I'm owed any loyalties by anyone. It's their choice. I hope we don't lose any students for it, but we may gain some from it too. I don't know. I trust our teachers. Our teachers aren't people that we've picked out from the bus stop down the road. They're vetted. They're quality teachers. They deliver their style of teaching, but with the OWL's ethos. So that will never go. Something I'm huge on in this business, as you know, and the teachers know, is the culture in this business is fucking paramount to me. That everybody's on board, everybody feels welcome, everybody feels valued. To me, that feels like true leadership, rather than me telling them what to do and how to do it. I'm not going to tell them how to teach the drums. As long as targets are being hit, and well, not even targets being hit, again, that doesn't feel quite right, but as long as the ethos is there, and the students are ultimately falling in love with playing the drums, I'm a happy man.
I really don't think it will have that effect, because neither of us want this to just be somewhere they come for an hour a week, smash on the drums, go home and forget the name. We want to provide a service outside of that. We want to be there for support for their career if they go down that path. We want them to learn the drums and have fun. We want them to master the drums if they choose that career path. And there's so many ways to do that. Online courses, the app, the community, building the drumming location we've always dreamed about that we can go into in another episode. The recording studio, all these things, make your own CD here, launch your album here, all these things. And for all that to happen, there has to be some sacrifice short term. But for the short term sacrifice in terms of you not teaching anymore, they're going to get to work with our great teachers who we've hand selected anyway, so they're not losing anything there. And in a few months, they're going to be able to enjoy so much more than other places who are just the place they go for an hour a week. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what we want. And I want to reiterate that there is definitely nothing wrong with that, because that was me. That I was, and I say this with we're still very small. I'm not saying that we're any way further down the line, but I was just a Gumtree ad at £15 an hour for lessons 5, 6, 10 years ago, whatever it was, and this is part of that journey. This is part of that growth, and it's similar learning to me, like back to the batch filming thing. Knuckle down for 6 months, get the planning done, and then I'm free to execute next year, or we're free to execute next year. And there's a certain level that I have to consider my business second, and then I have to consider my family first, and that's the other thing as well. Actually, that's important to mention, because you haven't just pulled away from the teaching to focus on someone else for 6 months. You've made the decision that out of those three things, the teaching is the one that the in-person teaching is the one that can go and cost the least, because they're still going to learn with great teachers, and that means you can focus A on your family and B on the next 6 months of development of ours. So that's important to mention as well. It was the least damaging one that sacrificed. You're never going to sacrifice your family, obviously, and development for the next 6 months is not an option to sacrifice that either. So and sacrificing option B gives the most growth long term. And I think we've just seen how quickly the world can change. You go back 3 years and someone tells you you're going to spend 18 months, 2 years inside your house. You go, it's mental. It's never going to happen. We've just seen that happen, and it happened quick. So for the last 2 years, most people have just stagnated. Most businesses have just stagnated. Some have done amazing. They pivoted and launched new businesses, but they're the outliers. I think most people have really just sat around for 2 years and tried to survive. But it just goes to show how quick that time can fly by, and we're not prepared to waste any more time.
Absolutely. And I've learned a few rules in sort of business over the years, and one of them is be willing to adapt, and not only be willing to adapt, but also be open to what that looks like, because that doesn't necessarily mean, we need to now teach on Zoom, or we need to now offer video lessons. For me, those are adaptations that are inevitable if you want to grow. But being able to adapt means that your life might look very different to what it did, like you say, a year ago, 6 months ago, a fucking week ago, right? So that's something that I want to like stay focused on. And we have a mantra that is like go towards our true north. Our true north is bigger than just a sentence. I couldn't say it in a sentence, but we understand what that true north is, and as long as we're moving towards that true north, we might have to go east a little bit, as long as it's northeast, or whatever it is. Like, that is really important to me as well, because like you say, I don't have all the fucking answers. I don't want to do this alone, and I don't want to just dig my heels in and be like, no, this is the way that everyone's done it for 30 years, because that's bullshit. Like, doesn't mean it doesn't work, but that's not the type of people we are. We like to adapt. I like new challenges. I like doing things differently. And there's so many times where throughout my music career, from bosses to people I've met in the street, that whatever it is, that are like, you're never going to be able to do that. I remember so vividly a boss saying to me, I was living in Jersey before I moved over to London. I want to go and make my living from music. And she kind of she was lovely, and she didn't mean anything by it, but it's just the view of some people. Like, she sort of scoffed at me and was like, I don't think that's very realistic, and then
you can guarantee as well that comes from a place of regret. Like, what was her dream growing up that she didn't follow?
Yeah.
And therefore, even subconsciously, even the nicest people in the world do it. They'll put down other people who are not prepared to sacrifice their dreams, and not even not prepared to sacrifice, not prepared to not try. If this fails, you gave it a go. And I know where this business is headed. I absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt. And that, I think, is really important, what you've just mentioned as well. We know that the end product of Al's Drum School, the physical drum school, is one aspect of it.
Yes.
That's it. So, we are prepared to move away and launch this and launch that. And some opportunities have come up recently that require you to have some time to focus on. Great. And if anything, all power to you that you've been able to mentally go, that's what I'm doing. Because there were times, I know of times in your life, and for me as well in my life, where you wouldn't have been strong enough to make those calls. Am I sacrificing this? Is this the right thing? You get decision paralysis. Whereas you're mentally strong enough and confident enough in the business now, and in your own attributes as a business owner, as a businessman, to go, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, that's what's happening. And that really is growth on an amazing level.
For sure. And that is something that like we discussed this the other day. Like, my belief is that constant growth isn't always good, not just in business but in life in general. Seasonally the world change. Like, we're not always in spring, because there's reasons for that, right? So constant growth isn't necessarily my aim, but so how do I want to phrase this? I've kind of lost my fucking thought there. Damn, that was going to be good. My point with it, was like, constant growth isn't always what I aim at, but constant adaptation is, and constant awareness about what's going on. That's what I was going to say. Sorry. So I am a stickler for commitment. Like, if I say I'm going to do something, fucking hold on, because it's coming at you thick and fast. So if I commit to something, it might take me a while to come around to the idea. Like, as mad as it sounds, to like having a baby, it took me 2 months to get into that headspace. Me and my wife spoke about that. Like, I understood, but I wasn't there really. I was doing the things, and I was like loving and supporting. But anyway, back to this. If I choose to do something, I'm fucking doing it, and I'm hitting a home run. Or I can't say I'm always going to hit a home run. You're going for the home run. But I'm going for, I'm swinging for the fucking, the back seat, the fences, that's the phrase, thanks, because I'm not a I'm not a half-assed kind of guy.
Well, I agree, full send or not at all.
Exactly.
And half-assed things don't work.
They don't. I'd rather do one thing, even if it's not truly in line with what I want to do right now. I'd rather fucking do it and own it than do 6 that are a bit vague and a bit like, ooh, and a bit shit. So.
And also, in regards to the time out, and I don't want to use time off because that's not what it is, the time out from the teaching, you can zoom out, which is super important, and be able to see all the opportunities. You know, again, business owners, sole traders, you know, self-employed people, you can get so caught up in the day-to-day that you can't see the wood for the trees. And I deal with clients in my own business all the time who just, they can't see the wood for the trees, and you go in and they pay you all this money to sit down and consult for them or to do their marketing or whatever, and what you're actually saying is so obvious, but they see huge value in that because you're not in the trenches. You can see it clear as day. And that is why, you know, I think actually that's one of the reasons why we've ended up working together so well, is because you're here day to day, you are Al of Al's Drum School, and I'm your business partner. But me being outside of the daily running of it can come in and say, well, actually, why don't we just do this? Yeah, so obvious. Of course it's obvious. I can see the whole pie. You're not expected to see the whole pie. You're controlling your area of it. And I think what you're going to gain from the next 6 months is some huge perspective on what Al's needs to look like over the next 18 months, 2 years. And I'm quite excited for that.
And how it runs with, you know, as you know about me, like I'm feedback Freddy. Like, give me all the fucking feedback constantly. I don't always agree on it, I don't always act on it, but I want to know. So it gives me some, like you just said, when I'm here, the systems don't need to be robust because it's only me using them. So yeah, it's a bit of a headache, but I just get on with it, you know. Whereas when there's other people using the systems, we've already had this with our teachers in the last quarter. Some things I was like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, yeah, but it's not obvious to us. And I'm like, thank you. Now we can do something about it. We lay it out as if not like to use the phrase, like in layman's terms, like these guys aren't laymen. They're fucking great and they're very intelligent people. But if you don't understand why things are done a certain way, it's really easy to just crack on and deal with all the little shit bits. But
likewise, that conversation with them, they're not business owners, so they might not understand why certain things are done certain ways. Yeah. Why don't we just have a diary on the desk? Because I can't check that from Portugal. Yes. You know, so it needs to be online.
Again, back to our true north. Exactly. Like, I don't want to be here 40 hours a week. Like, I'm not afraid to admit that either.
And to be honest, once you explain that to people, they understand. Yeah. Again, they might not necessarily agree, but there's a system. Here's why. Yeah. Crack on with it.
Yeah. And also, back to the feedback and transparency with them, like, when we're figuring stuff out, we tell them we're figuring this out. Bear with us, like, and let me know how we can make this better. You know. I feel like we should wrap up Biz Life there.
Yeah, definitely.
And but I hope that was useful for everyone, because there's a lot of learning in doing this every day. There really, really is. That moves us on to my favourite part of all of our podcast episodes. And this is Jordan Google's drumming. What the fuck does that mean?
I hope you all listened to the first week's one, because this is not going on for long. So enjoy this whilst you can.
And I actually this week I'm a little bit nervous because I'm worried that I'm not going to fucking know.
I might say it and you'll know exactly what it is. It's interesting. So for those who don't know, I am not a musician. I am not a drummer. I am Al's business partner on the drum school for other reasons, other skills that I bring to the table. But I am learning. And I'm very passionate about music, and I'm learning and understanding the beauty of the drums as well. With that comes a lot of new words. Don't
worry, Jordan won't be teaching you how to play the drums.
I'm not a teacher here either. Point. I'm not covering for Al, trust me. Although that probably would be worth paying to see.
If you're going to spend any money on a drum lesson, that's the one to pay for.
We'll make some noise. No one will want to listen to it.
So anyway, without further ado.
So this is a word that I remember an assembly at school, and some drummers came in and they had a specific drum. Okay. Now I remember what the drum looks like, and I had to Google the description of the drum to find out.
I think I might know now.
Okay, we'll see. I don't even know if I'm going to say this right. I'm hoping it's a silent D. So the word is djembe.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be that. Cool.
Okay.
Really
so
good.
The djembe drum, I had a lot of fun playing this as a kid at school.
Yeah.
And the only thing I remember is, and this might not be right, is I think they're played traditionally in Africa at ceremonies, tribal ceremonies, funerals, things like that.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to hand it over to you. What is the djembe drum?
So before we dive into this, I am not an expert in world drumming, African drumming specifically. So I'm just going to share So I'm just going to share my knowledge and my experience of the djembe. So yes, the djembe comes from Africa. I'm pretty sure it's from Senegal traditionally. I know that it's big in Senegal. It's big all over Africa, but the teachers and people that I've come across are Senegalese. Would that be? Or from Senegal. One thing I do know about the djembe is it's fucking powerful. When you really hear a true djembe master play, it's incredible. I'm going to say this respectfully. It's also a bit of a like chuck on the back, go to a hippie festival and bang a djembe.
It's interesting because I remember thinking as a kid when the djembe drummers walked. I remember there being a lot of them when they walked in for this assembly. I was like, I was an arsehole at school, and I just thought, this is going to be so boring. One man hitting a drum. There's no cymbal, there's nothing. It's going to be boring. My God. Yeah. When they go. And it was fantastic. And that's why it stuck so long. Yeah. So, I my initial opinion was, how great can this bloody thing be? This wooden thing. Yeah. And then what they do with it is amazing.
They're incredible. And they are often made... So they're made from one piece of wood. There's a tree that's carved into that shape. Like modern drums, not djembes, but modern drum kits are often laminated, loads of layers of wood and loads of different shit going on. These are just one piece of wood. I don't know what tree they come from, if it's the same tree every time or if it's different. And then nowadays, again, it would be some sort of polymer skin that goes over the top. But actually, no, it wouldn't be. No, I'm going to take that back. Still, they use calf skin, goat skin, and they shave it. The reason
is there a reason it's goat skin?
I don't know, but one of my really good friends from Jersey back home, he's a percussionist and he played djembe and he studied over in Senegal, which is why I have a bit of an of an inclination into, or a bit of a knowledge around it. Often they would stick these big metal things that kind of look like a metal fan, and it's got all loads of rings on it, so it makes like a shaker sound whilst they're playing that too. The djembe would often be played in an ensemble with other drums as well. I think the name for them is a dum-dum. I think it's a big one that lays on its side and they hit it with a stick. Again, forgive me. Please don't slaughter me for getting any of these names wrong, because I'm not an expert on this. And they would be played, like you say, at ceremonies. It's probably traditionally as well to do with warfare. I would imagine all drums are connected to warfare because of the fucking just the loud and brashness of them. That's what they were there for signaling as well, right? So it probably comes back to that. And I have to say, that's probably all I know about a djembe, if I'm being totally honest, because I don't really know. They are, I know that when they're played, so all hand drums are played, they're just typically like one surface, right? Rather than it being like, you get sets, bongos, congas come in sets, but if you're just playing the one surface, the way they're played is all about hand shape, and they have different tones. They have like open tones, slap tones, closed tones, all these different things. So rather than it being hitting a different surface to get a different sound, it's just played, hand shape is moved, which is what makes them so fucking awesome, because it's not...
And am I right in thinking it's position where you hit the drums?
Correct,
or the contact you make?
Exactly.
So at the edge is a duller sound, and in the middle that reverberates more, or something.
That's correct.
That.
Yeah, you're right.
See, drum lessons with Jordan, 30p an hour.
Jordan now offers djembe lessons here in Brighton.
Yeah, absolute expert.
So yeah, you're right. So there's a lot more, not a lot more techniques, just different techniques. The one thing I do know about, I always found the word world music a bit like, all music comes from the world.
Yeah. It almost seems patronising.
So I prefer like folk music for that. That for me is more descriptive of what it actually is. For me, there's things that are to be. So I studied with Indian drummers in Pushkar. Studied with those guys a little bit. I wrote about it a little bit in one of our courses. The way that folk drummers, particularly, or like specific regional drummers from different areas of the world, the amount of respect and the way those drums are treated, like, I've got goosebumps now. It like fucking fills me with joy. I try and bring a little bit of that into it here. We're not necessarily praying around the drums here. That's not really what we're doing, but they're to be respected and they're to be looked after and treated in a certain way. And for me, the biggest thing that I noticed when I see folk musicians or regional musicians playing like that is that respect aspect, and that like, it's sacred. It's fucking sacred. And whether you look at that in a religious sense or
I was going to say, often it's quite spiritual to them as well.
Hugely spiritual, yeah. So the biggest thing I picked up from when I was studying with those drummers in India was, before they played any drums, is they just touch it. So like obviously in lots of cultures, touching feet or like touching faces, kissing, like touch is a really intimate thing, right? So that was the one thing I noticed before they played, is they touch and then like bow in like prayer hands, and that just took me back. I remember seeing it like, fuck, wow, like that's so special. So that, yeah, I'm kind of going a little bit on a tangent, but for me that was what I always noticed about like regional.
Well, it's interesting because even as a novice, I can appreciate the sort of aesthetic beauty of a brand new cutting edge drum set, but I still think there's something, you hold a stunning violin carved from, you know, some gorgeous wood, or a djembe carved from a single piece of wood. There's something so, I don't know, just so beautiful about that because of the craftsmanship that goes into it. Yeah. And I remember getting that even at school when these guys came in. So yeah, I've learned a lot there. So that one I enjoyed.
So another, I'm going to plug because it's our podcast. We offer group lessons in not just drumming, but all sorts of Latin American, African, Asian, all different drumming. If you're a school, or we do it for like hen parties, office team building, corporate team building, all that type of stuff. So if that's something you're interested in, also do feel free to shoot us a message and we can send you all the information about that.
And actually it's amazing the level of connection you get with the people you work with, hugely, or your friends or whatever, when you make it. Maybe music's the loose term, but if you've never played before, but when you just make noise together on an instrument, there's something really powerful about that, and that's why I think the workshops and the team building is so popular.
Definitely. And again, just fear not, Jordan won't be teaching those.
No, not at all.
There we go. So real episode 1 last week was a pilot of Jordan Google's drumming. Thanks, Jordan.
No problem.
So we are coming to the end of this week's episode. We again, me and Jordan like systems, and we're trying to work to a parameter of 60 minutes for these episodes. So we've got about 5 minutes left. There was something that I wanted to talk about this week, in the sort of as a little bit of news. For those who are connected to the drum world, you'll know that Roland and DW have just merged, or rather, DW has joined the Roland Corporation. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I don't really have much of an understanding of sort of big business, as you probably picked up from this episode. I'm learning, whereas Jordan does. Jordan's a little bit more involved in things like the stock market, like companies, big companies that do stuff, corporate world. Jordan comes from the corporate world, so he's got a little bit more experience in that. For me, I look at that and go, is that just going to be less quality control now because there's just more things added to this company? Obviously, those listening who are drummers know that Roland is famous for electronic drums, and the DW Corporation actually incorporates quite a few other companies. They've got obviously DW Drums and Hardware. They've got the PDP stuff, which is Pacific Drums and Percussion. They've got Latin Percussion, and they also, this was a recent acquisition I think within the sort of last 10 years, was Gretsch Drums and Slingerland as well. So that's quite. The reason I wanted to talk about it is because for the drumming world, this is huge. These are like two fucking huge big gorillas that are like, you know, coming together to do this. So we can talk about what that means for the drum world. It's pretty exciting because it means, you know, you've got a really high-end acoustic drum manufacturer merging with or whatever the term is, forgive me if that's wrong, but working with now the biggest electronic drum retailer, or manufacturer. So that's huge. Like, I'm really excited to see what that means for drummers. There was a few things that happened with, I think, Gewar Drums and DW as well, and there was some talks about stuff happening there. I'm not sure if that came into fruition, but I really like the mix of hybrid, or we call it hybrid in drumming world, like electronic and acoustic. I think it's really cool, and I'm really excited to see what they come out with. And we'll I'm sure there'll be some announcement. We got the drum show next year. Might be a bit quick for the drum show next year, but you never know. We'll see. But I would like to ask Jordan a few questions about what he thinks that might mean in terms of as a corporation and as a business. When companies sort of acquire other companies like that, or buy them, if you will, to sort of say it crudely, what does that sort of involve, and in terms of business wise, I guess is what I'm asking. I hope that's an easy enough question to answer.
Yeah, I think rather than going into specifics of how a company buys another company, because that can work out hundreds of different ways, and even I would only know limited. especially two companies of that size. Like
Sure.
the paperwork alone is huge, let alone the terms and conditions sheet. It took us long enough to sort our partnership out. But I think what's interesting from this, and I've only had a little bit of time to look into it, is the fact that they're going to still operate as separate entities makes me think that the point of this merger is because, as you said, Roland, leading global manufacturer of electronic musical instruments, they wanted a share of the percussion side of the market.
Right.
So you have two options there. You can either produce percussion, start producing percussion goods, percussion instruments, or you can swallow up the biggest and the best there is. And sometimes it's a case of it can be multiple things. You can either be a bit of a bully company where you go, do you know what? It's really easy. We'll just acquire them, start offering their goods, and then we get a cut of it. Or it can be from a place of admiration, which this probably is, and you can say, do you know what? DW, the product they make is incredible. It's the best. So if we want to produce one, we're not going to match that. So let's explore the opportunity of a merger. And I think that probably makes a lot of sense. And now from Roland's point of view, they have now got the market sewn up in that they are going to get cuts of sales of both major types of drum sets. So it makes a lot of sense. I'm also just seeing that it was the deal came at the same time as an anniversary for both companies, which I think is great. It seems to make a lot of sense on paper.
I mean, that's combined, that's 100 years of manufacturing electronic and acoustic drums, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing that came to my mind there as well, when we think about sort of acquiring that company, is I then start thinking, well, yeah, because if we want to start manufacturing drums, we need a place to manufacture them. We need the materials to manufacture them. We need all the R&D. We need all that shit. So by acquiring that company, you shortcut all that. So sure, you're not losing, but you're maybe not gaining the 100% of starting your own company, but you've gained that 50 years of experience overnight because you're.
And I think that's a really good point. That the experience of the leadership, the experience of the manufacturers, that experience cannot be bought.
It's priceless
and takes decades to teach, to master. So the fact that you've got a company who's merged, these two companies have merged, the product's going to be fantastic. And also, just from our own experience, the difficulty of marketing in a way that's supposed to pull customers away from elsewhere, to pull customers away from other drum schools into ours is hard enough. So now imagine that you've got to pull customers away from a 100-year or 50-year established company. That's some serious effort, whereas you can just merge with them. I say just as if it's super easy.
And actually, we keep saying merge as well. I read that so Roland has bought 100% of the shares of DW. So in fact, it's not a merge. It's an acquisition. They've bought it, the whole lot. And the CEO, Chris Lombardi, and the founder, John Good, are still active in their roles. They're not stepping back. They are, I guess now, maybe it's a crude way of putting it, but working for Roland, which probably comes with certain challenges and benefits as well at the same time. Particularly, I mean, I can't imagine how that would feel after, what are we, like 2 years in now, in 48 years' time, after building this baby, and then all of a sudden you're working for, quote unquote, working for someone else. Now, I'm sure there's obviously a deal that they were happy with. I'm sure they haven't walked into something that they didn't want to do, but that must be
I think that's one of the most interesting things that I'm reading here, is that they're still operating as separate entities, and I think that's probably a big a big sweet spot for the brand, is that they still get to have their baby. It still is it still is their brand. So if we were to be purchased by, again, I'll just use Apple as an example. I don't know why they buy a drum school, but they purchase us and we're still able to operate as Al's Drum School, just owned by Apple. I think that would be a lot sweeter, the fact that you're not kissing goodbye to all that work. Your name's still out there, the brand's still out there. And I've no doubt that the leadership will be able to continue as it has been as well.
And then there's maybe an aspect for the guys at, I mean, I obviously don't know them personally, but for Chris Lombardi and John Good, that maybe after 50 years they're quite happy to do that. Maybe it's less admin, to use the word. Of course, it's bigger than that in a company that size, but there's less to sort of worry about. They can just quote unquote turn up to work, get on with it, go home to their families.
And also, we're talking about this like the purchaser is getting all the gains, but actually the company that's been purchased is also getting the expertise of the larger company.
Yes.
They can now be injected into markets that they dominate. They can piggyback on all their marketing, all their budget, all their branding, and their team. There'll be things that the purchasing company are experts in that the purchased company aren't.
Correct.
And they suddenly have all that experts as well. So mergers, acquisitions, they can sometimes be seen in a really bad light. That the Billy Big Boy comes in and swallows up the smaller company. It's not always that crude. It can be massively beneficial, and some of the greatest companies in the world have stemmed from mergers.
Yeah, and just something that came to mind, like from a drummer's perspective, DW, it seemed like they wanted to start branching into electronic stuff. They, as I said, they've tried. There was a bit of research and development going on with some of the Gewa stuff as well, or Giwa, however you say it. If you're gonna dip your toe into some new area of product development, you're gonna want to do it with the best at it, right? From both sides, like you just said, both sides benefit from that, because Roland don't have to spend all that time learning about acoustic drums, and DW don't have to spend all that time learning about electronic drums. Two heads is better than one most of the time, I believe, if not all the time.
Well, you look at decades ago when eBay purchased PayPal. eBay was struggling with their online payment system. PayPal had a solution. Let's build the system together. They still operate as separate entities. You can use one without the other. But it just made sense. And PayPal has arguably grown at a much more, a much quicker rate than if they had done on their own. eBay had immense power to launch PayPal into a household name, and now PayPal is still one of the most trusted online payment platforms.
We accept PayPal here at Alex Drum School, by the way.
But we're not on eBay, so we're not on eBay yet.
Cool. We're going to wrap it up there. We're a little bit over this week. I hope whatever you're doing. I hope we haven't overrun your lunch break. It's been a pleasure, Jordan, as always, my man. Thank you very much. Any final thoughts on anything we've spoken about today?
Book the beginner's drum course, because you will not.
Let's just say it. Go and buy the beginner's drum course. This is our podcast. We don't have any sponsors. We are the sponsor. So
you will not regret it. If you are looking to learn the drums at your own pace in a way that even myself, a total drumming idiot, can understand, then the work that's gone into that beginner's drum course is fantastic, and it isn't a lot of money. It's on the website now. You can find it and you can purchase it in only a few clicks. It couldn't be easier, and you will. If you book it now, you will be ready for Christmas to get your first drum set, so you can't beat that.
But as I mentioned before, with transparency with you, no one's bought it yet, and I made a promise on Instagram that there's a stick bag right here in the studio with me, waiting, from Dream Cymbals. So if you need that extra little push and your drumsticks are flopping about in the cupboard with the drum kit, buy the course, learn the drums, put your drumsticks away. Everyone's a winner.
There we go.
As a human being,
See you next time, guys.
How can I express myself totally and completely? Now, that way, you won't create a style, because style is a crystallization, and that way, it's a process of continuing growth. It's a process